All right, we're talking with Ridley in North Carolina. Welcome to the show, Ridley.
Hey, can you all hear me?
I can indeed.
Ha-ha.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. I'm really excited right now. I'm the one who's been tweeting at y'all nonstop the last couple of days.
Well, it was a very sweet tweet, so thank you.
Of course. I'm mostly calling because I live in North Carolina now, and I've lived in the South most of my adult life. But as I've gotten further south and met more people, it's been harder for me to engage with theists as respectfully and honestly as I want to. I don't know if this plays a factor or not, but I am autistic, and when people are really aggressive and confrontational with me, it puts me in a spot where I either shut down or feel cornered and want to just start lashing out, and I know that's not a healthy way to talk to people. I'm wondering what kind of tips you would have, like advice to have to start engaging with these people further, especially since a lot of them are like my wife's family and my wife's friends.
Yeah, that's really rough, and I empathize, having moved south from being mostly up north for most of my life. The weirdest culture shock. I've been multiple countries, multiple places. The weirdest culture shock was moving from Portland, Oregon to Columbus, Ohio. And I was suddenly very keenly aware that I was an outlier and somebody who, like, oh, if I were to get into a conversation with this person, things could turn sour very quickly, even if they seem really sweet and awesome because of that one difference. So I totally get it. Eric, what are your thoughts in terms of how to best engage with somebody?
Well, it's a tough one right now, because or it's a tough one in that specific situation because, it's not just some rando on the internet where you can go, oh, okay, I'm done with you and block. It's family. And so it kind of, it takes a cost-benefit analysis a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, how much do they want to have the conversation with you? And if they don't want to have the conversation with you, then what they're doing is really annoying. There's really not much you can do about it, other than say, hey, I'm a little uncomfortable because of, X, Y, or Z. And so I don't come over as often, and they get to make a decision about it that way. But you can only really change yourself. You can only really impact yourself that way, especially if they don't want to talk. Have they told you that they want to engage with you about this kind of thing?
Yes. My mother-in-law and a couple people I work with will be like, hey, so, I know you don't believe in God, but have you considered this or have you considered that? And while the first couple questions seem innocent and nice, after a while it starts to be like, okay, so why are you angry at God? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And as I've been an atheist since I was 17, so 11 years now, that's the question that boils my blood the most, because it's like, how can I hate something I don't believe in?
Yeah.
And also, why will you not believe me when I say I just don't believe what you're telling me?
Yeah, I think there is a point of no return when you hit those kinds of conversations, right? Because it can seem very innocuous at first. Oh, so you don't believe in God? No, I don't. Oh, well, why is that? Well, and you can give your abbreviated reason for it. And as you get farther down that rabbit hole, it becomes less and less easy to extricate yourself from it. So my best advice as someone who has had these kinds of conversations all the time is to only allow yourself to go to a point, right? They are not entitled to know anything more about you than you're comfortable telling them. So if you want to say, hey, yeah, I don't believe in God, and they say, why? And you say, well, that's a personal reason that I don't feel comfortable sharing. They really can't push back on that without obviously pushing that boundary. And then you have a right to say, hey, I told you I wasn't comfortable with this. We need to move on.
Yeah, if their response is to dive into, it sounds like they're wanting to dive into their own personal, they watched a really, really bad apologetic argument and want to go, why are you mad at God? Just saying, hey, it's impossible to be mad. Well, actually, no, I don't think it is.
No, I hate Dolores Umbridge with a passion.
Yeah,
but I don't think she exists.
Exactly. So
I mean, that is fair. I hate Ivan Ooze with everything I haven't seen that used in one movie. So.
No, exactly. So I think that,
but what they're ultimately doing is they are assuming what your motives are and saying, this is your motive. I'm already assuming this is your motive. And now I'm asking you a question. It's a loaded question. They're loading their assumptions into it before they even ask you. So if they want to engage with you, then start by saying, hey, well, let's first unload that question. You're saying that I'm mad at God, and then why am I mad at God? And that's not a very fair thing to do. If you want to talk to me, then talk to me. But if you're going to talk at me, I'm not going to engage with you, because that is not a kind, fair, or appropriate thing to do.
Thank you. I feel heard. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. I feel heard for the first time in a while. Thank you. Thank you a lot.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You are certainly not alone in this. This is something that probably most of the people watching can empathize with as well. In fact, if you're hearing Ridley and feeling like you understand where they're coming from, drop a caller in the chat and show them some love. Ridley, I don't think this is ever going to be an easy conversation to have, especially in places like North Carolina, unfortunately. But being able to know when to put the brakes on and being able to say, okay, this is as far as I'm going. Any farther, that's crossing a boundary that I'm not comfortable with. And being vocal about that, right? And being able to say, no, I'm done talking about this now. That's not something that you need to worry about in terms of like, the responsibility to have a polite conversation is on both people, right? Not just you. And I think that a lot of evangelizing theists, not all theists, but evangelizers specifically, rely on the other person's desire to remain polite, to get more words in, and to overstep boundaries. So it is not polite to evangelize to somebody or to ask these questions to somebody who has clearly is not interested in having this conversation. And you're okay to say that, right? If you're feeling like you're being pressured, you can say, I'm sorry, this is kind of impolite. I'm feeling a little bit disrespected right now. I'm going to step away.
Yeah.
Even just calling that out can be so powerful. And that's not on you, right? Like how you feel if the other person is being disrespectful to you, that's not a you thing. That's a them thing.
And you don't owe them.
Right.
You're, crossing your boundaries. And you do deserve boundaries. You do deserve to set the conversations that you want to have. And that's it's rough, I had a conversation with somebody who wanted to see me, and I said, are you vaccinated? They said no, and I said, well, then you can't see me. They said, well, are you holding yourself hostage? I said, well, if that's what you're calling it, then I guess so. I mean, I'm not going to compromise on what I think is important. I don't owe them that, and they can either be okay with my boundaries or not. But you're not asking them to do something unreasonable. You're not asking them to unreasonably listen to you or unreasonably engage with you. So if they want to have that conversation, say, hey, let's have that conversation. Maybe they don't know how to. Maybe they just don't know how. They've seen really condescending, shitty people do it. And so they're like, oh, that's how you do it. And then they dive in. And so if you say, okay, well, let's talk about charitable listening. Let's talk about charitable communication. So what's going to happen is I'm going to assume the best out of you. And I want you to assume the best out of me. And I want you to ask questions before making assumptions. And I'm going to give you that courtesy, and I expect that courtesy in return. And if they drop and do something and make that assumption, go, oh, actually that's one of those assumptions. Let's adjust that. They may need help learning how to have these conversations.
Exactly. Ridley, what are your thoughts?
I'm just really thankful for everything you guys are saying. I agree 100%. When I have these conversations with these people, I don't think they're coming from a place of malice. I think it is, like you guys said, where they watch some shitty apologists do that exact same thing, and so they thought that's the way to do it. Or they heard a story from their coworker where it was like, well, my son was an atheist, and I presented him with this argument. He was destroyed.
Yeah, I destroyed my son. Hashtag Christianity.
Right? Like, nothing says Christian love like ruining the emotional stability of your family, whatever.
Preach.
I just really appreciate the clarity you guys have given me, the perspective you guys have given me, and I'm going to do my best to apply everything to these conversations, especially like with people like my mother-in-law, because I love her so much. She is my other mother. But when we have these conversations, I'm like, and I'm already having to mentally prepare myself for the inevitability of when she asks if we're raising our child to be a Christian. But that's months from now, and we don't need to worry about that right now.
Absolutely.
I guess all I have to say anymore is thank you very much for taking the time to answer my questions. Thank you guys for everything that you do, and thank you for being such a blessing on this community.
Aw, well, that was
appreciate
really sorry, the blessing on the community for me, because it was like Christianese for a minute there, but I appreciate you, and thank you so much for calling in, Ridley.
Definitely. Take care.
Y'all have a great day. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Okay, bye.
Okay.
There is I want to get into just a couple little things before we dive into the next call, just because it's like, I think there are a couple things I want to point out. A, you're absolutely right that people who think that these conversations go a certain way have probably watched compilations of Ray Comfort or Kent Hovind or, Frank Turek, any of these like evangelizing hot gotcha kind of apologists. And the thing they don't tell you is that they only pick the ones where that actually works. Like, if you were to follow Ray Comfort around and watch him have this conversation, I guarantee you at least 50% of the time, the other person is like, this bullshit, and just calls him on it and walks away, right? So, like, the Christians who are watching this are being fooled and duped into thinking that, oh, if I have this conversation, it's going to go this way, when they're only showing you the ones that work the way they want it to. So keep an eye out for that. But also, I do want to reach out and just say, hey, there's this concept called fawning. So it's kind of the additional F in the fear, freeze, or flight, fight, freeze, or flight response to somebody coming at you, that adrenaline rush. The fourth one is the one that I identify with, which is fawning. And the reaction is to be accommodating and to sit on your own emotions and to make the other person feel comfortable at your own expense as a way of protecting yourself. And I think a lot of people who grew up in evangelical homes and Christian homes have that instinct. So don't push yourself on that too much. Like, if you're noticing that that's what you do and you walk away and you're like, oh, I don't know why that happened. Why did I accommodate that person?
Why did I agree to that? I don't believe that at all.
Right. Don't beat yourself up too much. That's an adrenaline response. That's a fear response that has been triggered. And that's not your fault, right? You might be able to identify it and work through that eventually, but don't guilt yourself for agreeing or for accommodating a conversation you otherwise wouldn't because you're afraid or because you had that response trigger. So just something to put out there.